Good evening and welcome to Closing Arguments. I'm Michael Ayala in for Vinnie Politan. The jury has been selected in a trial out of Tampa, Florida. Kalia Everett is charged with first-degree murder for the 2015 death of Tyzea Donaldson. Now, Donaldson was shot and killed during an alleged drug deal. Facebook photos and cell phone data would lead investigators to the arrest of 17-year-old Kalia Everett. Now, Everett is charged with first-degree murder, robbery with a firearm, and 2 counts of aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. He faces life in prison if he is convicted. All right, joining us now with the latest on jury selection, Court TV legal correspondent Julia Janae. Now, Julia, it's great to see you. Now, this trial has a bit of a storied history. It was actually on hold in part due to the defendant's mental status. Tell us about that.
Michael, we're talking about a case that started in 2015, so nearly 6 years have gone by that this case has been on the docket there in Hillsborough County, and it was paused in a sense as far as things moving forward to a trial back in 2016 when the court agreed that the defendant was incompetent to stand trial. This after he was evaluated by 4 psychiatric professionals. 2 of them found that he had a mental illness and that he could not proceed with this case. 2 others found the exact opposite, saying that he was competent, but the court did side with those who said that he did have a mental deficiency that kept him from being able to understand what was happening in the case. Now, that lasted for about a year, even though there were these semi-annual evaluations. Ultimately, after he was transferred to a state hospital and evaluated, the defendant in this case, Kalia Everett, was then determined by psychiatric professionals that he could stand trial, and we see him now in court for this jury selection that started today.
Now, Julia, Everett is considered the trigger man, but there are several other individuals who are linked to this case who have not been charged. Tell us about that.
We see that in looking at the investigation of this case initially. Back in late 2015, early 2016, investigators first started their investigation with a phone call. The phone call that was made to the victim setting up this drug deal. The victim, Tyzea Donaldson, received a call saying that 2 men will be coming to his house, to his apartment, to buy those drugs from him, marijuana. And investigators were able to trace that phone number back to a Jahid Jones. That was an individual that they interrogated and questioned, but he denied knowing what the call was about. He said someone else used his phone, but they were able to find Facebook photos of that individual and the defendant together. We also know that there were 2 men who eyewitnesses said were present during that deal, and that 2 men ran away, even though only one was the shooter. Now, the other person who was there with the defendant, we don't see that they have been charged. We also don't see that Jones, who I just mentioned, was charged either as being an accessory in any way to the defendant. But we know today in court, the judge did ask the prosecution just to clarify, is anyone else charged with this incident? And they said no, it is Donaldson who is standing trial alone for this murder.
That's interesting. Well, jury selection just wrapped up today, so tell us about the jury.
This jury is a 15-member panel right now because of the threat of the tropical storm Elsa that is in that area. The judge said that she wanted 1 extra alternate just in case all of these jurors don't show up on Thursday, because we're going to have a dark day tomorrow while Tampa, Florida and many along the coast are bracing for the impact of that storm. So we have 12 jurors, 3 alternates. 7 of those are women, 8 are men rather. 1 is a black male, 1 is a black woman, and 2 are Latina women. This jury is diverse. They've battled a lot of questions today, or fielded a lot of questions from both the state, the defense, and the judge. A lot of those centering on whether or not they feel they can be fair and impartial when the alleged shooter in this case was a juvenile at the time. We know that Everett was 17 years old, and that is something that his defense has tried to get raised in this case as a defense, or as something that shows that he could not have formed the requisite specific intent for the crimes that he's charged with.
Now, Julia, you mentioned the tropical storm that's on its way, so weather actually seems to be playing a little bit of a role in this trial. What can you tell us about that?
I can tell you it interrupted jury selection several times today. We have our Court TV crew that's there inside the courtroom, and our field producer let us know that everyone's phone in the courtroom was going off at various times, giving those national warning alerts that there was a hurricane warning for the area. So something that it could not be just in the background. This was something that was top of mind as far as the safety of those who are in the courthouse and those who are going to be sitting on this jury. So we know that the judge, Samantha Ward, was very cognizant of that, letting this jury know that they would not be starting until Thursday with opening statements. But she also let these attorneys know that if something happens very serious when it comes to this storm, that they will hold off until Monday. And the prosecution said they would also be ready to go forward Monday if need be.
All right, you'll certainly be keeping an eye on that. And finally, my understanding is that the defendant was actually offered a number of what could be considered fairly good deals and actually turned them down.
That's true. We heard about that today, Michael, something that happened before jury selection, before those potential jurors were coming through the courtroom. The judge wanted to know if there were any offers in the case, something that judges typically do when they are getting to know what the status of the case is. And the prosecution said on the record that they initially offered the defendant 40 years in prison if he pleaded guilty. And most recently, the beginning of 2021, end of 2020, they offered 25 to 30 years. And the judge questioned the defendant to make sure he understood that the minimum that she can sentence him to if he's convicted of that top charge of first-degree murder is 40 years. So that deal that they're offering him is 10 years less than the minimum that he faces. But after an emotional communication with his mother, who was there in the courtroom, in the gallery, he did decide to not take that deal and choosing to go forward with the trial.
Yeah, the defendant deciding to roll the dice. All right, Julia Janae, thank you so much for that report. Truly appreciate it. Right now, I want to bring in my think tank for this evening. Joining us tonight in Seattle, Washington, trial attorney Ann Bremner. In West Palm Beach, Florida, former police lieutenant and trial attorney Rich King. And in Atlanta, Georgia, criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor and law professor at Texas Southern University, Michael Sterling. Thank you so much for being with me this evening.
Thank you.
All right.
Good to be here.
Let's start right there. Ann, I want to start with you. You get a defendant with what sounds like a pretty good deal, deciding not to take it. Tell me what you think about that.
Well, I was just listening to that and thinking, you know, are there competency issues still? I mean, that he would not look at a good deal like that when the evidence is so heavily weighing against him, and then he's really relying on his mom. I mean, maybe, of course, she probably believes in his innocence, and maybe that's communication that they're having. That was kind of what was going through my mind, Michael, because I think that the last deal offered was a good deal under the circumstances, especially with time served and other considerations with respect to the length of the sentence.
All right, let me go to you, Rich. This is an instance where you have the mental state of the defendant at issue. How is that going to play into the trial?
So that's still huge right now because they actually asked for a jury instruction that still takes, even though that he's been ruled competent, the jury instruction that they've asked for still has the jury to consider whether or not he was able to, based on his age and his mental capacity, whether he was able to form the requisite intent to commit the crime. So that's still a question for the jury, and it'll still go forward. And I think that that's going to be one of the tactics, it appears to be one of the tactics of the defense, amongst probably other things they have in mind.
Now, Michael, age is also an issue here. We have a defendant who's around 17 years old at the time. I don't know if he looks 17 now, but he was 17 at the time. And to be honest with you, today's criminal, unfortunately, tends to be, well, violent criminal, tends to be in their teens. So I'm wondering how you think that age factor is going to play in with the jury looking at and considering a young man who committed this crime.
Yeah, and certainly you have to believe that the lawyers asked the requisite questions during the jury selection process to factor in that, he's a 17-year-old defendant who has competency issues. Or as to your point, Mike, he was 17 at the time he committed this crime, and whether or not he had the requisite mental state, the competency issues, the age, all of those combination of factors could potentially play a role in this trial. Particularly, it's one of those things you turn to when the physical evidence is overwhelming and the witnesses are overwhelming, then you turn to whether or not somebody had the requisite mental state in order to form the culpability necessary to be convicted beyond a reasonable doubt.
Now, the other thing that you have here, Ann, is that you have a defendant who's not particularly sympathetic, right? He was a drug dealer. This was a drug deal. How do you get a jury to value that life the same as they would any other life, considering the circumstances?
Well, I think you look at his age, his lack of, priors. I think that may come in too, and the competency issues. I mean, think about it. If he was still in juvenile court, then he'd only be held till he was 21. But of course, he's not. He's in the adult system, where I think most teens at that age with this kind of a charge would be in the adult system. And I also think that he can look vulnerable. This was for marijuana and $300. You're thinking that just seems so. Marijuana is, of course, legal in so many places, including where I am in Seattle, that you think, wow, I mean, what a minor thing to kill over. And then again, you get back, I think, to his competence. And I think a lot of the defenses in death penalty cases these days for younger men and women is the development of the brain, as a juvenile, that you aren't fully there informed until you're fully an adult. And those that we see this more and more often. So again, that could garner sympathy.
Yeah, no question. I mean, around the country, you're seeing actually states take a second look at the age that they're determining young people to be adults for the very reasons that you mentioned. Now, but in this case, there was a 911 call that I want everyone to listen to. Back on December 30th, 2015, around 7:02 p.m., police received a 911 call about a person shot in the chest. Of course, that was the victim in this case. Now, the caller gave a brief description of the suspected shooters, saying that they were very young and that they ran from the scene. Here's some of that chilling 911 call.
Who did this? He was a black boy, white dress and white auto. Ma'am, slow down. You said it was a black male? Yes, they were two teenage boys. Why are you doing this? Shut up. Okay, they were black male? Yes. You know what color they were? Well, I don't know. They ran somewhere. Did you know what they were wearing? Yes. What were they wearing? Hello? Oh my God, this is police! Police are okay, but they need to look for. Hello? Hello? Ma'am, what were they wearing? They were the movies. That's their house. Hello? That's the people's house. Hello? What were these guys wearing that did this? We do not know, ma'am. I am a bystander, and the boy is bleeding. He is dying. Somebody needs to get here now. There's already help on the way, ma'am, but the deputies need to know who to look for. Did you see what direction they went or anything? They went behind the apartments. I don't know. I guess to the north. Okay, it was two people, right? Two boys, young boys. Okay, they went behind the apartment complex to the north? Yes, please, come here. 6 is the number. I don't know. That's all we saw. We just saw somebody shoot and run. Okay, that's okay. We need to put to the deputies. That's why I'm asking. But they're pulling up now. Do you see them? I do not see the police.
All right, a couple of things jump out to me about that 911 call. Number one, how important a piece of evidence this is. And let me go to you, Rick, because you can hear the desperation, the situation itself, the way it's coming out, the way the information is being delivered speaks for itself. Something you cannot recreate generally in a courtroom. So how important a piece of evidence is this for the prosecution?
First, it's always, apart from the prosecution, let me just say this. I think the actions of the dispatcher in that case, her ability to continue to re-ask the questions and try to get the pertinent information is so important. And before we get to the prosecutor, the importance to the prosecutor, it's important to the responding deputies or police officers that are there to be able to set up some sort of perimeter, have a description, and maybe make an arrest in the case. It becomes very important to the prosecutor because of the information that's given right at that moment, the emotion that's being displayed by the caller, and that caller's ability. Very important if that caller has the ability to articulate what she has seen at that moment, and it's recorded in perpetuity for the jury to hear. I think that's one of the most crucial parts of the evidence.
Yeah, without question. And I think if you notice on that 911 call, the mention of the two young people involved in that particular crime. And again, only one person involved in this case. So it'll be interesting to see if maybe a name turns up or this person might turn up in this trial somehow. All right, stand by, guys. We do have to take a break right now. Coming up next, a manhunt underway in Georgia for the person responsible for fatally shooting a golf pro on the course. Don't go away. We'll have that story for you next.